In the murky depths of the Ohio River, something downright unsettling stirs the water. Folks around VV, Indiana have whispered about it for years. Mud mermaids. Yeah, you heard that right. These slimy bastards rise from the sludge like river spirits gone rogue. Some say it's all just bullshit, cooked up by fishermen with a few too many beers in them. Others swear on their lives these creatures are no myth, and if you're unlucky enough to see one, well, good fucking luck sleeping again. Whether they're cursed spirits, mutant fish people, or something worse, one thing's for sure, these river monsters aren't just stories, and when they crawl out of the mud, you'll wish you never stuck around to find out why. VV, Indiana was founded in 1802 by Swiss immigrants and established the first commercial vineyard and winery in the U.S. A quaint little river town with a population of 1,777, it sits right along the Ohio River, about halfway between Louisville and Cincinnati. This place looks sweet as hell on a postcard. Folks here are friendly enough, but this spot has its quirks. It's the kind of town where gossip moves faster than a cat on fire, and every family's got some weird-ass story tucked away. But VV isn't just about potlucks and small-town charm. Nah, this place has history, and with history comes folklore. We're talking eerie, spine-chilling tales, the kind of shit that makes you think twice before sticking a toe in the river. And trust me, there's one legend here that'll make you want to stay the fuck out of the water altogether. The mud mermaids. Now, water-based cryptids ain't exactly rare. Everybody's heard of lake monsters like Nessie or Champ, and every ocean seems to have a story about a goddamn sea creature dragging sailors into the watery depths. But the mermaids? Pfft, these things are a whole different beast. They aren't your typical fishy fairy tale or mermaid romance. These things aren't here to sing songs or grant wishes. They come slithering out of the muck, dragging nightmares with them. The locals say they're slimy, elusive, and creepy as fuck. Whatever these things are, they're way, way worse than your average fishman anecdote. The thing about a story like this is that it grabs you by the throat and pulls you under. It's easy to write off river monsters as drunken hallucinations or weird local legends. But the deeper you dig into this one, the weirder it gets. And that's exactly what we're fixing to do. Dive headfirst into one of the most strangest tales this side of the Ohio River. We'll look at the folklore, the sightings, and the explanations folks have cooked up over the years. But right now, I'm just setting shit up. Buckle up, because by the time we're done, you'll never look at a river the same way again. The mud mermaids of VV, Indiana have been part of local lore for as long as anyone around there can remember. Ask the oldest folks in town and they'll tell you this story's been passed down from granddaddy to grandkid for generations. You'll hear about it at backyard barbecues, campfires out by the river, or over rounds of cheap beer at the local watering hole. And every damn version is just a little different, somewhere between a cautionary tale and a fucked up bedtime story designed to keep kids from wandering too close to the water. One thing's for sure though, these slimy bastards are nothing like your classic cartoon mermaids. The earliest mentions of the mud mermaids go way back to the early 19th century. Some say the tale goes as far back as the early settlers, who claimed they saw strange creatures sunbathing on sandbars along the Ohio River. These weren't the kind of mermaids you find in a Disney movie. Hell no! They were more lizard-like in appearance. They had 4 to 5 feet long, fish-like bodies, slimy, yellowish skin, and webbed hands with claws at the end. They also had pointed ears, similar to a dog. They didn't have a fish-like tail as most mermaid depictions are. Their lower half was tapered to a point, like a lizard's tail. They had the kind of human-like faces that haunt you long after you close your eyes. They're described as having a mix of humanoid and amphibious features. Some accounts suggest that their faces resemble those of humans, while others describe them as more reptilian in appearance. They're covered in a light coat of chestnut-colored hair, but no hair on their head. Imagine the ugliest fucking fish you've ever seen, give us some humanoid features, and slap on a layer of river sludge for good measure. Bam! You've got yourself a mud mermaid. And then there are the bar stories. Sit down for a drink in Vivi, and it won't take long before someone starts talking about the river. Maybe they'll mention the weird-ass fog that rolls in some nights, or the strange noises coming from the water. Inevitably, someone will bring up the mud mermaids. That's when shit gets interesting. The bartender might lean in and tell you how his grandpa swore he saw one during a flood back in the day. The old-timers at the end of the bar will nod knowingly. The beers flow, and before you know it, you're caught in a tangled web of folklore that feels more real with every sip. The thing about these stories is that they stick with you. Even if you don't believe a goddamn word of it, the imagery burrows into your brain. You can almost picture those slimy bastards sprawled out on the Ohio River shore under the summer sun. Their mucousy fish bodies glistening with mud and water. Folklore like this thrives in small towns like Vivi. It's part of the culture, part of the air you breathe when you grow up next to a river that's seen more weird shit than a Stranger Things episode. The mud mermaids aren't just a story, they're a tradition. People tell it to spook their kids, to entertain friends on dark nights, or just to keep a piece of the past alive. It's one of those stories that makes you feel like the river is listening, waiting for the right moment to remind you that not everything lurking in the water can be explained. And the scariest part? No one really knows where the truth ends and the bullshit begins. So yeah, the mud mermaids aren't just folklore, they're a part of Vivi's soul, slimy as that may be. When it comes to sightings of the mud mermaids, the stories are just as murky as the goddamn river they come from. People in Vivi have been swapping tales about these fishy fuckers for more than a century. And while most of the town probably treats it like campfire bullshit, a few folks swear up and down that they've seen these creatures with their own eyes and they're real. Some of the earliest accounts go all the way back to the 1800s, Before indoor plumbing was a thing and people were out there raw dogging life on the frontier. We're talking back in the day when they used corn cobs for toilet paper. Dude, ouch! The first sighting of the mud mermaids occurred in 1839. A Pennsylvania newspaper reported on creatures about 4 feet high and covered with a light coat of chestnut-colored hair that lived in the muddy banks of the Ohio River. The next sighting happened several years later in October of 1891. It came from a fisherman who was out on the river just before dusk, probably hoping for a quiet evening catching catfish. Instead, this poor bastard got way more than he bargained for. It was spotted by a Confederate captain named J.M. Osier, who described encountering the creatures, one male and one female, and being menaced by the male. It was either being territorial or protecting the female. The Cincinnati Enquirer published the story at the time, adding to its mystique. According to his account, he was reeling in his line when 2 strange creatures crawled their slimy asses out of the mud onto the riverbank. He described them as having grotesque fish-like bodies, with yellow skin that looked like it'd been marinating in the muck for a century. But the kicker? They had human-like faces. Faces that stared right the fuck back at him. The fisherman said he was too frozen with fear to move. All he could do was sit there and try not to move as these things stared at him for what felt like forever. Then they began sliding back into the mud and disappearing like some goddamn giant river monsters. The fact that Osier is a seasoned sailor adds more authenticity to his description, seeing as he clearly would know the difference between a local fish species and a mud mermaid. Then there's the wild-ass 1894 newspaper article by the Akron Daily Democrat called Mud Mermaids, Strange Human-Like Creatures That Live in the Ohio River. The article talked about some strange-looking bodies that washed up along the riverbank after a flood. According to the article, the townspeople found 2 creatures half buried in the mud, and they looked nothing like anything anyone had ever seen. The bodies were slimy, bloated, and had these weird human-like features. Of course, the article didn't stick around long because why the fuck would it? The whole thing was swept under the rug pretty goddamn fast. And any official records are long gone, probably accidentally destroyed by someone trying to save face. These creatures utilize the tides to extend their domain at times. During this time, certain areas of the banks of the river had areas with logs and stumps of trees. When the tide comes in and submerges this deforested section, the creatures will come and dwell within there. When the tide is low, there would be tons of deshelled mussels and fish bones, which indicated that these semi-aquatic creatures would be carnivorous. These creatures apparently require a lot of food to survive, as the locals would describe that when the tides would come in to wash the remains of the beasts' feasts away, the next time the tide was low, a new batch would be filled in its place. Witnesses have reported seeing them both in and out of the water, with some accounts saying that they're just as capable of walking on land as they are swimming in the water. That's creepy. There have been reports of mud mermaids stalking people. Mud mermaids are primarily nocturnal and are most active at night. They are also said to be territorial and will defend their habitat against intruders. Overall, little is known about the behavior and ecology of mud mermaids, and much of what is acknowledged is based on first-hand witness accounts. However, the creatures continue to be a next-level subject of fascination for cryptozoologists and enthusiasts of the paranormal. All right, now we've hit the part where we try to make some fucking sense of these mud mermaids. Here we go. As with any cryptid worth its salt, people have been throwing around all kinds of theories about what these slimy, fish-faced weirdos could be. Are they just drunk fishermen spinning tall tales? Or is there something darker lurking beneath the surface? Hell, maybe it's a little bit of both. Let's break it all down. The most favored explanation is that these mud mermaids are just exaggerated accounts of real animals. Because, let's be honest, if you've ever seen a river catfish the size of a fucking 6-year-old child, you know how easily facts can get blown to shit. Catfish and sturgeon both haunt the Ohio River, and some of these bastards grow huge. Toss in some mud and low light, and suddenly a half-drowned sturgeon looks like a river monster ready to ruin your day. But it doesn't stop with fish. Plenty of animals could be mistaken for something creepy if you catch them at the wrong moment. Muskrats and beavers love to scurry along riverbanks, and when they dive into the mud, they can look suspiciously mermaid-like if you squint hard and have a wild-ass imagination. Otters are also known for slithering through the water, and those little assholes are so smooth and quick that they could easily be mistaken for something more sinister. And let's not forget the hellbender salamander, also known as the snot otter. Yeah, that's a real fucking thing. These slimy 2-feet-long lizards live in rivers around the area, and they look weird as hell. Could some early sighting of a fat-ass hellbender slithering out of the mud be at the root of the mud mermaid legend? Oh, fuck yeah, it's possible. Another theory, albeit weak, is that a lot of these sightings come down to people being drunk off their asses. Vivi is a small river town, and if there's one thing small towns do right, it's drink. That's because there's not much else to do. Trust me, I know. Stories that start as a drunken ramble by the riverbank have a way of gaining momentum, especially when they get told around a campfire or in the back corner of a bar. One guy sees an otter in the dark, tells his buddy over a couple of beers, and the next thing you know, that otter has turned into a fucking mermaid looking to hunt down grandma and smack her on the ass with its tail. Add in the possibility of hallucinations, whether it's from acid, magic mushrooms, or some questionable moonshine, and suddenly the mud mermaids seem a lot less supernatural and a lot more like the fever dreams of someone who's been riding the Yellow Submarine. But that doesn't stop people from believing the stories. In fact, half the fun of local folklore is the way it takes on a life of its own, no matter how ridiculous it sounds. Another explanation for them is that this could be an as of yet unknown, unclassified animal. What this animal's ancestor could be is clearly something that would be almost impossible to determine. Several new species of critters are being discovered and classified every year. Unfortunately, there is little concrete evidence to support the existence of mud mermaids. Most of the reports and sightings of these creatures are anecdotal in nature, with little or no photographic or video evidence to back them up. yeah, that's because people didn't normally tote a camera around with them when they went walking around in the woods during the 1800s. A gun? Hell yeah. A camera? Fuck no. However, there have been a few instances where physical evidence has been found that could potentially be linked to these creatures. In 2015, a group of researchers found a strange hair-covered object on the banks of the Ohio River. The object was about 4 feet long and appeared to be some sort of aquatic mammal. While it's unclear whether this object is actually related to mud mermaids, some people have said that it's evidence of their existence. But here's a twist. What if it's not all bullshit? What if just maybe there's something real hiding beneath the surface of these stories? The Ohio River is old as hell and deep as sin. Who's to say what ancient creatures might be lurking in the mud, waiting for their chance to crawl back into the light? Folklore always starts with a kernel of truth. And for all we know, the mud mermaids are no different. Maybe there's something we don't understand yet. Some weird evolutionary anomaly, or even a supernatural presence that the river's been hiding for centuries. Shit, I wouldn't even put it past some kind of genetic mutation from all the chemicals that are dumped into the Ohio River. So yeah, sure, maybe it's just a big fish, dudes tripping out, or a bunch of townies having a laugh. But there's always that tiny nagging chance that something more is going on. And that's the thing about folklore. Once you start poking around in the shit, you never really know what's going to crawl out of it. So there you have it, the mud mermaids of VV, Indiana. Whether they're just the fever dreams of drunken fishermen, or something darker lurking in the muddy depths of the Ohio River, one thing's for damn sure. These creatures have become a staple of local lore that won't go away. Each story adds another layer to the mystique, making sure that anyone who dares to venture near the river's edge does so with a mix of curiosity and fear. As long as folks are gathered around campfires, trading tall tales or shooting the shit over a cold one at a local bar, the legend of the mud mermaids will keep swimming along, never quite sinking into obscurity. Whether you believe in the supernatural or think it's all a bunch of bullshit, it's the stories that matter. They bind the community together, spark the imagination, and remind us that sometimes the scariest things live just beneath the surface. So next time you find yourself in VV, Indiana, take a moment to look over the edge of the river. Who knows what might be watching you from below? Just be careful, alright? The last thing you want to become is the next chapter in the mermaid saga. Keep your eyes peeled, and maybe, just maybe, stay the hell away from the water after dark. It's possible that mud mermaids could be a new species that has not been discovered yet. Until there is more evidence, however, the existence of mud mermaids remains a mystery. If you vibed with this video, don't forget to tap that like button and subscribe. That way you won't miss out on more of my fucked up commentary. And besides, I really do appreciate it. What do you think of the mud mermaids? Bullshit? Misidentification? Or the real deal? Let me know down in the comments. Oh, and don't forget to check out my fucking kick-ass merch. The link's in the description. I've got Scarinator t-shirts and tanks, Stay Creepy t-shirts and tanks, mugs, stickers, and all kinds of epic stuff. Hell yeah! Until next time, Y'all keep it real, keep it chill, and stay creepy! Catch you on the flip. Thank you for watching and listening until the very end. You kicked total ass.